welcome everybody again. Welcome to the Transformative Studies Department Futurism's Salon. And today we are talking about the frontiers and futures of tech, which is, again, very consequential for us all. We are going to be focusing on something very positive uses of AI power for more humane, inspiring, even spiritually uplifting digital technologies. So I'm very excited for this event. However, I did want to start by saying, first of all and foremost, that I'm happy to say we won't spend the hour just talking about big AI topics like bots running amok, economic mayhem, or pink slime, as much as these are all scintillating and important. The title need not be misleading. We are talking about programs that benefit from the power of AI, which we all know is also substantial. And I think, we're all already getting a little bit of a weird sense of being exhausted by conversations about AI writ large. As Zoe Williams said recently, that we know that we're launching into this conversation, and by the end of it, some AI will be doing tasks we never thought possible 10 minutes later. But we're going to both, to a certain extent, hold the big picture as the background and really focus in on a very particular niche dissertation topic, which is exciting, and it's very much in inception phase. And there's a lot of things, Sari, I want to say that are very powerful and beautiful about your research. One, of course, is the expertise and deep experience that you bring to it, having worked deeply in the field for many years. Another is that you acknowledge the great role and forces of the greater systems we're enmeshed in. You're very conscientious about topics like the role of our economic system driving tech, even as you're also doing a great job homing in step by step on the very particular focus on humane and ethical trends in digital technologies. And I just want to point out as a note about our academic department generally, that by doing both, you're really doing the tough but very vital work that makes for great scholarship of holding multi-scalar realities and tensions. So we are creating a lot of digital technologies that are humane, healing, uplifting, transformative. We all in this space, I'm sure, have used and are using some, while we're all also grappling with challenging trends, to say the least. Digital tech impact in terms of addiction. There was another meta case on internet addiction, I think yesterday in Los Angeles. Digital impacts on concentration. I recently learned this new term that I find very colorful for the impacts on focus and concentration. And it's interesting to learn a term when researchers say that already almost all 8 billion of us are suffering from this, except maybe the Ashwar and the Inuit, which is they call popcorn brain, or the tendency to have sort of rapid fire thinking. I also think as a background issue of different challenges over the last 20, 30 years of where we thought technologies might be leading us and how they might be holding society in more uplifting ways. I remember so much speculation in the 90s about the internet being the force of, and a lot of digital technologies of democracy and democratization. And now we have a real mix of dynamics going on. But I think of Cory Doctorow's important term about the general trend of internet and digital technologies that he calls enshittification. And he does have a one-page PDF online where you can see the really short synopsis of how economic and overall trends tend to enshittify or degrade the quality of internet and its product and experiences over time. So I mention these frames just because I want to highlight this academic department. We do have a very strong lens of system thinking and expertise in systems dynamics, and have been advancing this along with lenses of inner and transdisciplinarity and creative imaginative thinking within science and scholarship. And these lenses together, I think, create a kind of an academic superpower, I might even say, those to acknowledge the different important facts and realities at the many scales of our research, even as we focus on the essential work of doctoral work, which is to become experts in a very narrow domain. I think that this really polyphonic focus allows us to integrate important concerns of real world context while also focusing on our own research niche, as we're going to focus on in this talk. And as much as the media at times can obscure this, as scholars, we know that these various big picture trends really impact our research, the future of our research, as well as our lives. So this is all very important. So with all that said, I'm very happy to introduce Sari Harrison, fourth semester doctoral student, who is working on honing, focusing an initial draft of a dissertation proposal. And again, it's going to be a beautiful presentation. I've had a glimpse, so let's dive in. Thank you so much, Sari.
Yeah, thank you, Jennifer. I really appreciate the kind words. Even though underneath that, she's like, Shari, you need to keep honing. And I think all of you who have been through the PhD process can relate to that. I'm not the best at narrowing, but I'm going to say that's also a superpower.
It is. It's a superpower.
Thank you. So, welcome. Thank you so much for coming and taking your time out today. This is a topic about my dissertation, and my dissertation is about post-humanist technology, which is technology that can move us towards a post-humanist world. I do want it to be an open discussion as much as possible, which means, like I said, I haven't honed completely. I'm working on the proposal, but it's not done yet. I really want feedback. I thrive on feedback. If you think I'm wrong about something, I want you to tell me. If you think I'm overgeneralizing, I promise you I will overgeneralize. So please call me on the overgeneralizations. Or just if you're like, oh my God, have you thought of this? Please raise your hand and interject. So I want to start with my vision for the world, which is that everyday technology, I'm trying to rename consumer technology, but I'm going to keep saying consumer because it's many, many years of habit that makes me do that. But everyday technology is moving humanity towards a post-humanist world. And what do we mean by post-humanist? Post-humanism is within the general realm of post-human thought, and it's got three central tenets. So one is that they want a world that's post-humanist, which just means that we're no longer considering some humans more human than others. We don't consider men more human than women. We don't consider white people more human than Black people. And it's also post-anthropocentric, so a world where we no longer consider humans more important than other species, more important than the planet. And it's also post-dual, so it envisions a world grounded in a relational ontology and ceasing the creation of new categories of other. And I'll talk more about relational ontology, but you've probably heard of the Ubuntu philosophy, the phrase, I am because we are. That is the essence of, I think, of a relational ontology. And Jennifer keeps reminding me, and it's so true, that when I started investigating posthumanism, I found again and again that people think I mean transhumanist. The transhumanists are really seeking to extend the capabilities and longevity of the human through science and technology. This is purely from an Enlightenment worldview. Posthumanism comes from a postmodern worldview for the academics in the room. My inquiry is, which is for the non-academics in the room, is a summary of my kind of core question in my dissertation, and this is the current iteration. What happens when a group of lay people, by lay people I mean people that don't self-identify as designers or developers, that have some lived experience of relationality? By that I mean it's not like foreign to them to think I am because we are. They understand how deeply interconnected we all are. What happens when that group of people collectively design and vibe code software technology prototype using trans rational ways of knowing? To dive into that, I'm going to start just by talking about today's everyday technology, and then I'll get into vibe coding. Then we'll talk about design, some of the academic theories I'm using, transition design theory, ontological design, and then into cosmotechnics, which is more of a philosophy, and the gap that I found, and then how I intend to fill that gap. So let's dive into today's technology. And here's where I'm going to overgeneralize. Let me first just say technology is great. I use it every day. I love it. I've been a technologist for 30 some odd years. I don't like to say how many because it tells you how old I am. It's wonderful. And some of the characteristics it has, it targets users and consumers. Another characteristic is it uses engagement metrics to define success. And this is something I don't think many non-technologists understand. It's like they think we're out there just, the technologists are out there calculating how can we make more money? How can we make more money? It's actually not that. It's how can we make people use our software longer? And that is like, how long am I spending in the app? How much do I convert? Convert could be like, I buy something, of course. It could be I click on something. It could be I open something, I read a piece of content, I watch a video. And then how many daily active users? An active user opens the app or goes to the website. How many of those do we have daily, weekly, or monthly? These are the metrics that really count. And another characterization is they use A/B testing to drive decision making. So it's not like, we're out there thinking, how can we make this a better product? It's like, well, what if we put one piece of new content every 10 posts in your media feed versus two pieces of new content every 10 posts? And then they look at these incredibly massive dashboards of literally hundreds of metrics, and time spent goes up and daily active users goes down, and conversions went up, but this went down, and they make decisions based on whether or not that overall package is good. And this is causing these unintended consequences. We just heard from Jennifer, there was a case yesterday and then again today, the one in LA was about a young person saying that Meta and YouTube both intentionally made their products addictive. I would say they didn't intentionally make them addictive. They intentionally optimize these metrics, like time spent, which leads to addiction, also leads to polarization, loneliness, lack of focus. Behind all this is this underlying assumption that nobody talks about. We don't run around the halls of Apple going, technology is neutral, but there is this underlying assumption that every app is being met by this completely agentic individual that knows what they're doing and knows what they want, even though that's none of our experience, and the technology is just neutral. And of course, the underlying worldview here is modernity, dualism, individualism, capitalism. Quick story. And I know at least Chris knows what content moderation is, but just quickly what content moderation is. A lot of these platforms have to stop really horrible content from entering our feeds. It's also AI needs to also moderate content and keep the horrible content out of the content that they're consuming. And this involves a lot of technology, but also human beings. So an engineer that I know worked on one of these major platforms and was working directly on the content moderation system. And no, this isn't a story about you, Chris. But this engineer was working directly with these content moderators and was hearing that their mental health was being severely impacted. They were watching, there's some really, really horrible stuff that people try and get onto social media, child pornography, suicides, murders. So they're seeing this content again and again, and they asked this engineer to please blur. It's like, I can tell the content is bad, even if I don't have to see the whole thing. And so she's like, well, that's like half a day of my time. Of course, I'll do that for you. And so she did it. But the metric of how much content was being moderated went down. Their mental health went up, but that wasn't something that can be measured real time. So that engineer got a bad review that quarter. So this is what we sort of know about consumer technology, and there's a lot of different responses to it. All of them are important. There's a lot of people that think technology should be controlled. There's amazing regulation work being done, mostly in the European Union. Thank God for them. There's a lot of books that will tell us how to put down our phones and how we can have willpower over our technology. There's also a bunch of tech optimists that say, I mean, I think I actually heard Sheryl Sandberg when she was at Meta say very directly, the answer is always more technology. We cannot stop progress. We must submit. This is the tech optimist perspective. Academia is, as always, more nuanced. They see the problem, they see the complexity. There's a lot of beautiful responses, social innovation, responsible research and innovation, massive conversations about ethics, both in technology and beyond, privacy. There's some very specific frameworks that are designed to help us make better technology, all of which, in my experience, is ignored by high tech, certainly, and probably most regular tech, high tech being like Apple, Meta, Netflix, Amazon, regular tech being the place I work now, Richieker. More than human design is another really great one where we're designing with and for other species. There's really cool frameworks out there for things like how can we bring the Japanese concept of ikigai into technology? And there's calls for technology to be infused with specific ethics or wisdom, like if technology should go here, technology should go here, technology should go here, all of which is sort of being ignored. Just a little teaser on the gap. Heidegger, a German philosopher, very, very well known, it's very prolific, both predicted our current state and saw a possible way out back in 1949 in his originally talk turned essay, The Question Concerning Technology, and we'll talk about that in a bit. Anyone have any questions or comments? Please jump in. All right, let's move on to vibe coding. Generative AI, we do have to talk about it because, when I first started this dissertation, generative AI sort of hadn't even really come out yet. And I was really bummed because I'm like, now it's all anyone's talking about in technology. It's like there isn't any other technology in the world. There is other technology. AI is changing everything. It's changing the job market, all sorts of content creation. It's also changing the conversation. At least for AI, it's no longer a question of is it neutral or values laden? It's a question of can we keep it aligned with human values? So I see that as some progress in that we've acknowledged that technology can have values. That's great. And then, of course, the question of will its intelligence outstrip ours and we become slaves to it is also a question. I want to say that AI is everyday technology. And I still think it's not going to be the only technology we have, right? We're still going to have lots of other kinds of technology. And it's also driven by engagement metrics. I think there was a case about I won't bring up the cases, but it's if you look deeply at the cases against AI, about some of the lawsuits against AI, you can see underneath that the engagement metrics, or you can just see it yourself as you're using it. It always asks you at the end, do you want me to blah, 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 blah? That's an engagement technique, right? They did an A/B test. What if we end every conversation with a request for offering them more stuff? And oh, what do you know? We spent more time because of that. But it's not my focus. And I'm planning to use it. So in this case, in this study, I am planning to use AI, but I'm not really focused on AI. So hopefully that makes sense. And to illustrate that, I want to do a little exercise. So if you could take a moment and bring up an image from a dream that you've had recently, or any other powerful dream you've had in the past that you're like, oh my God. And once you have it, describe it in the chat, just in a couple sentences. I'll give you an example. Just something short. Jennifer, can you tell me more about the baby peacocks?
Yeah, well, some people know I just left a place where there actually is peacocks, and they're supposed to be babies soon. And I really wanted to see them before I left. And in the dream, there was just two or three, and they already had those beautiful iridescent shimmering colors. They were really small, but yeah, they come out and they're pretty large and functional already. Yeah.
So they emerged large and functional.
Yeah, yeah.
Anyone else? I like it. Um,
I love that your dream had a dolphin in it, Shari.
that
Was that recent or no? Okay, we're getting some good ones here.
was when I was in a dream class. I tell you, when I was in a dream class, my dreams were so crazy. Let me see. Uphill on a snowy road and had to get out and pull the car up the hill. Wow. Okay, that's hard. Being above the earth like an orbit, marveling at the view, and then realizing I couldn't breathe. I'm sorry, I'm going to get so sucked in. Sunrise. All right, I'm gonna take Mimi's only because it's the most detailed, and I think it would do. I think it will illustrate my point the best,
Mhm.
and that's important. So this is Gemini, and it's Gemini's create image. I'm just gonna put it directly in. It's an amazing dream, Mimi. I hope Gemini does it justice. There you go. So why do I do this? Because that's an example of something we couldn't do a while ago. Like if I wanted to um, create a painting of my dream, I had to be a painter. And this is mine when I was with the dolphin asleep. I look so much younger. And this one is one I did. I had to, you do those visualizations. I'm sure you guys or anyone who's in the transpersonal space have done them where you're asked to meet a guide. And my guide was a pulsing orb of light coming down the path at me. And so I asked Gemini to create that for me. And this was what I saw. It's pretty wild. So why do I bring this up? Creating technology until now, you needed to have a feasible idea. You needed a designer, you needed a specification, you needed developers, and then you get a product. But now we have vibe coding. So what is this? It's possible now to simply tell AI about the software you want, and it's going to create it for you. Now, the engineers will quickly tell you it's a prototype, not a product. Even though some of the people that are building products that do this will tell you they're products. It's not going to be scalable and it's probably going to have bugs and all that stuff, but it should get the point across. And I'm pretty excited about this because I think at first I was terrified. I'm like, oh no, I was hoping to explain to technologists that technology is values laden and they were going to go like, oh my God, you're right, Shari, and we really need to be more responsible and create good technology, right? This is my original plan. And then I saw AI come out and I'm like, oh my God, everyone is a technologist now. They don't know it yet, but they are. So now it's going to look like this. Feasible idea, yes, it still has to be feasible. So there's still going to be a little bit of work to do, but that's what I'm here for. AI to prototype. So that's vibe coding. Let's move on to design. Any quick questions or comments about vibe coding? I have some engineers here who I just basically said are out of work, but I'm sorry about that. So design. Design, I thought you were focused on technology. Well, design is both broader than technology and one step in the process of technology develop. You design buildings, you design tables, you design workshops, you design curriculum, and you design technology. But with development being taken over by AI, it's going to become a really important step. And there's other even more important steps, I'd say, but like which problem towards which vision, which solution space. But for now, because I'm focusing design. So from academia's perspective, design's purpose is moving the world from state A to state B, where you have a current world, you have a design, you have a future world. Now, that could be for a lot of applications. Nobody uses my app to the future world of people are using my app, but it could also be a chair, right? So the current world is we have to stand or sit on the floor. You make a chair. Now we're sitting. And so in this future world, we have to deal with the consequences of our sitting all the time. Transition design theory focuses in explicitly on creating societal change. So this is the transition design framework. You need to have a vision towards which you're moving, which we've talked about, the post-humanist vision. You need to have a theory of change, which for time's sake, I am not going to talk about. Posture and mindset, he talks about just needing to have a sense of openness and curiosity. And you need new ways of designing. Ontological design is also exciting to me. This Ann Willis investigates design and found, first of all, it's fundamental to our nature. We are always going to be planning, deliberating, problem solving, architecting change in our lives. We are designers that's who we are. Also true is we design our world while the world acts back on us and designs us. We design it, it designs us. It's a hermeneutic cycle, according to from Heidegger's perspective. Which means that design is ontological. It's creating ways of being. As a systems theorist, which I think everyone in the Transformative Studies department, as Jennifer mentioned, we're all systems theorists. That's exciting, right? This means that design can create change. Donella Meadows tells us there's 12 leverage points for intervening in a system with increasing effectiveness. Leverage point two, which is just shy of the most powerful, is to shift the paradigm or worldview from which the system was created. It's to shift the ontology. So ontological design could live at leverage point two is my synthesis of that. Interestingly, point one is to transcend paradigms, which when you read her description of it is essentially transcending dualism. So putting those things together, ontological design plus transition design, you get the ability to change ontology intentionally. Current ontology, dualism, individualism, human versus nature, mind versus body, to a relational ontology. That is the big goal. And of course, I'm barely going to touch this, but cosmotechnics, and let's just dive into Heidegger first a little bit. The question concerning technology. I mentioned earlier that Heidegger sort of saw this predicament that we would get into and also saw a way out. So Heidegger investigated the nature or essence of technology, and he named modern technology, not all technology, but modern technology as enframing. And enframing literally means, like, the German word for enframing, apparently, is shelf. It's like modern technology is a shelf. It's a way to challenge nature into standing reserve. Heidegger was super fascinated with the Greeks, and he noticed that the word for technology, the root of it, techne, is, from the Greek perspective, also used to talk about creating art. And poiesis, which means just bringing forth something into manifestation, as in nature, art, or anything that manifests into reality, um, is another Greek term that he was fascinated with, which he interprets to be, from a Greek perspective, not how it evolved later, to be bringing forth or revealing truth. So aletheia, another Greek word. So truth, what does that mean? Truth. Truth is like the truth of a sunset, the truth of, when you have a moment where you feel deeply that truth has been exposed. He's basically saying that there are ways of creating that allow truth to emerge rather than imposing form. So if you have a piece of artwork where you're just looking at the piece of artwork and you have that experience of truth in that artwork versus some other piece of art that maybe was created by AI that is maybe not so revealing. He sees that technology creation can also be poetic. It can reveal truth. It can be more like art. And he thinks that he predicted that we'd eventually see that with modern technology, the human was also going to end up being challenged into standing reserve, right? The singularity would be the human suddenly becomes at the whim of technology. He predicted that would happen. He predicted we would see it in time, hopefully, and then we could move towards this other way of creating technology. Yeah, Jennifer, did you want to?
That's subtle. That's a really good presenter. You actually saw me unmute. So like, you've done a lot of presenting. I mean, I just keep wondering, because we have some really great technologists in the room, including yourself. I keep wondering about the examples that will exemplify some of these incredible terms and concepts. And I'm sure you're getting to that, but yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'll get to it because I see it as a gap. I mean, I think the examples all exist in poetry and
Mhm.
art right now. I don't think the examples exist in technology. If anyone does have an example of technology that they consider.
But I mean, there's a lot of apps that promote the arts and poetry and bring them to people. And I mean, I know one of the first things I did with ChatGPT is have it write poems with me. So, but I'm a layperson. But what's exciting at the start of your talk is talking about how with vibe coding, we're all technologists. So I think that's really intriguing.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the big questions that I have in my brain is like, is and I was going to ask for everyone's feedback on this at the end. Like, is this, sure, this is all like it sort of makes sense on paper, but when you have, or at least it does to me, maybe it doesn't to everybody, but it makes sense to me. But when I pick this up and I think about a technology that's going to really help me embody relationality, I'm like, no, what? But I'm curious about it. Yeah, Marcus.
I'm not sure this is going the right direction, but one way I could imagine this happening is through some kind of iteration and evolution, perhaps, right? Like nature develops not through, at least many of us believe, not through a grand design up front, but through evolution over time and adaptation. And one thing that is true in technology development, often consumers in particular don't know what they actually want, but they could build something, interact with it and say, that's not quite right, make changes to it and iterate, keep iterating. And the truth of what they actually want reveals itself through that iteration
Mm.
eventually, right? They learn by doing, they'll learn what they actually want and what they didn't want and what they meant and what they didn't meant. I had this question earlier when you jumped right into design is, well, where's the requirements development? Where are the requirements first created, right? And which I actually think can be is an important step, but a lot of people don't know what the requirements are, or don't know how to articulate them. And the great thing about something like vibe coding is you can just try it out. Yeah, you created an image earlier. You don't have to write a 3 paragraph description of the image you want. You can start with one sentence and then say, oh, it misunderstood this, or I didn't quite include that part, and so on. You iterate, and eventually you get the image you want by looking at your results and refining your prompts, your input. And so I think this is where perhaps this is one version, perhaps, of revealing the truth through iteration and evolution.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. And I think in my first version of my study design, which we'll talk about a little bit later, I have like I want the output of the group to be super fluffy. I don't want them to be like, it should have this feature and then it should do that and then it should do that. I want it to be like, it feels like this and what, and just really fluffy and outcomes, whatever. Yeah, Derek.
Well, just thinking about it now, someone could create an app. Oh, my son just joined me. But someone could create an
Hi,
app
Uncle.
that takes all the input of all the, spiritual masters, and you could get the AI to respond to you to help you like wake up to nowness.
Yeah. I took in my posthumanism class, one of the projects was, and I tried to get Kassar to come here. She did a posthumanist version of AI, basically. She did like a little, like it was going to respond to you as a posthumanist would respond. I never got to use it, but that I had that thought too, like maybe I should have her version of the AI create do the vibe coding for me.
I mean, could I interject just sort of an interesting challenge to the last couple challenge, which is sort of inquiry for the last couple of very welcome interjections from Marcus. And I didn't catch the second name. I'm sorry.
Derek.
Thank you, Derek. So, we've all been hearing about AI hypnosis, but also biases and loops tending to reinforce. It's flattering when people say it scientifically or statistically. So far, AI is 50% more flattering than humans. And doesn't that echo the experience we've had with the groups that are created through social media, the sort of enforcement of smaller groups rather than more large group conversation? So would that happen with this kind of personal interacting with AI, which is a huge topic since already apparently a lot of youth are having like more companion relationships with AI, and that's a big part of the marketing and sales, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and that goes back to this, can it do this? And if it is doing that, if it is being, too egregious or focus on engagement metrics, I don't envision this AI having AI embedded within it, like an AI chat embedded within it, but who knows, maybe it will. Or sorry, this technology, that prototype that gets created. I envision something more like, if I had to guess, more like a mindfulness app like Headspace or something like that. That's
Well, could
encouraging
you,
you to go into nature.
and then just I'll turn to Marcus in one split sec, but help make that distinction because I think for a lot of people who are not actively making technologies, it's not as clear for us. But I know you're really good with this, Shari. The distinction between the direct AI and sort of AI empowering other software apps, for example? Because I think that's part of your topic, right?
Yeah, I try to make the case with the art, right? It's like you needed to be an artist. AI is now your artist. I have an idea for art. AI is my tool in this case to create the art, and AI can be the tool to create an app.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's the distinction. And now that app could have AI within it as a feature. It could
Mhm.
have a little chat section that talks to AI,
Which
but it doesn't have to.
you can have art, you can have AI produce art for with or for you. Doesn't mean you have to chat with AI in the process.
Well, I can have AI create the app for me, the technology, let's say app, because I'm not sure what else it would be. It's not going to be hardware, so it's either going to be an app or a website, right? Um, so it's going to be, it creates the app for me. That app does not necessarily have to have a feature that is interaction with AI.
Mhm. Right, right.
Yeah, Marcus?
I think it's a really important point, Jennifer, and I think there are sort of two extremes that people have been talking about. One is all future apps will be personal. So everybody will just design their own apps, build their own apps, and it's just for them, and nobody else is going to ever use them. I'm having, all my apps on my phone will be my apps. Um, and the other extreme is we could have, one could build apps that other people will use as well, and millions of people, and there's still good reasons for that, why that's important. But then the question is, how do we get the requirements of multiple people and make potentially hundreds of thousands of people into an app? And of course, AI can help with that as well, right? You can imagine having a process of multiple AI agents. By the way, people already develop, of course, apps with AI already having multiple agents that critique each other. You could imagine having a platform that where everybody has a representative or some representation, getting all the requirements in, and then there is some process that tries to come up with a conflict resolution to come up with something that is the best for everybody. Of course, that can go horribly wrong, designed by committee, or
I'm
it
gonna
could
just
go.
stop you
It
there,
should.
Marcus, because that's a very we're back in the total rational modernist worldview of there are requirements and they can be uncovered and they can be put into an app, which is true in a lot of cases. What I'm wondering in my dissertation is, can it be a more transrational process? Can it be a more transpersonal process? Can it be more like art? Like I had this vision, like about this painting, and I started creating it, and it became this thing. And when it was done, somebody looked at it, and their lives were transformed. Right? It's not there weren't requirements for the art. Can technology be more like art? Yeah, Anthony.
First of all, what a wonderful presentation, and thanks for doing this. I was thinking as you were talking about constructing visuals and then generating meaning from it. I was thinking about the way that vibe coding is currently used in drug discovery, and really a lot of what happens traditionally is medicinal chemists spend a lot of time looking at structure activity relationships at molecular levels. It's a very tedious process. It can take many, many months. And an individual by themselves can create these wonderful constructions to then go through, a whole throughput of other proteins or other issues and look at fit, right? Look at potential fit, chemical fit. And it goes kind of beyond just classic kind of CRUD, create, read, update, delete applications. And it kind of goes a little bit to what Marcus was saying. Once you've created these through vibe coding, these visualizations that take, hours versus months, it's amazing how groups of individuals, perhaps working in different disease states and different areas of drug development, can use your models. So again, it's this unique way of vibe coding these really complex structures that have almost artistic qualities that then can be compared to huge, huge reams of data. And people are doing that independently now.
Yeah, I think that is the point I'm trying to get across. It's like it's this incredibly, like, you had to go to school for years and to learn how to code, and it's incredibly hard, and it takes incredible concentration, and you're in your left brain that whole time, and it's very sequential. Coding is absolutely 100% reason. So that process takes you out of the. I remember actually Mimi saying to me that when she's writing a dissertation on non-duality, and she's like, I'm doing all this literature and I'm writing this, and now I've lost the experience of non-duality in this moment because I'm so in the other side of it. So this is where I'm hopeful. Let me continue with cosmotechnics because I think it's super cool. There's this guy, Yokoi, who built on Heidegger and wondered if, instead of looking just at the poiesis, as Heidegger said, what if we look at the cosmology from which the technology is created? And I thought this was super fascinating. Western cosmology, which is Cartesian, the universe is matter and energy, scientific realism, there is no God, results in framing. But what if the technology emerged from a more typically Eastern cosmology, like the Tao or Confucianism, or not just Eastern Christian mysticism, Sufism, all these cosmologies that acknowledge something more than just matter and energy. And he offers the analogy of the incredibly drastic differences between Western medicine and Eastern medicine as an example of what might emerge from an Eastern cosmology if it were technology. It would just be fundamentally different, like acupuncture is fundamentally different from diabetes control. Yeah. So he returns to the shift called for by Heidegger, and he actually wrote the two books that I'm referring to here, Question Concerning Technology in China, but also Art and Cosmotechnics. He brings in Heidegger and Clay, who is also a philosopher of art in his way, and notices that they both are referring to this sort of cosmic underlying being, divine, from which the real beautiful work emerges. The aletheia is emerging when it's a poetic process. And he says Heidegger is asking for the non-rational to be brought to the creation of technology. So this is the gap that I've seen. How can we bring the non-rational to the creation of technology so that it can be a revealer of truth? Or can we? So quickly going back to, yeah, Jennifer?
Just that last sentence, is that the current dissertation inquiry focus, the gap, or the area of inquiry?
Yes, is the bringing of the non-rational to the creation of technology, yes.
Okay, now I'll just put that in the chat, although I can't copy and paste, but I'll just write that. That's great. Okay, thank you. I just wanted to clarify.
So going back to this transition design theory, we have the vision. We're not going to talk about the theory of change, but I could. Posture and mindset of the people that are doing the technology creation is a relational ontology, transnational practice. But then we need a new way of designing. He doesn't say we need new designs. He said we need new ways of designing. So this new way of designing, I envision, is bringing the non-rational to the designing of technology. There is a little bit of literature here. There's an amazing article by Cruz out of the University of Columbia, not Columbia University, but the University of Columbia. He does a lot of work with bringing Buen Vivir, which is indigenous philosophy in South America, to technology. But he studied a particular firm that works with indigenous cultures that was doing architecture work that did basically a round of shamanic experience before they created the designs for the building. And there's one or two others, but it really does seem to be a bit of a gap, I think, not surprisingly, because non-rational is not it's mostly in the transpersonal space. It's not necessarily something that gets integrated into all disciplines. So I'm not using the term non-rational because I think it's, I don't know, I don't like it. But that is my hope, that we can bring the transrational ways of knowing, like, for example, dreams or embodied somatic knowing or visualizations, to the process of designing technology. This is another Gemini creation. This was first pass, this picture. I still love it dearly. It was when I was working with perspectivism and animism. So transrational ways of knowing, just to give you the breadth of the literature here, Hui says non-rational, which he expounds that to not rational, not irrational, and non-dual, absolutely non-dual. And Gebser uses irrational or integral. Wilbur built on Gebser. Bergson uses the term intuition. There's transpersonal, but that transpersonal tends to include things like channeling and the paranormal, a lot of psychedelics lately in particular. Farrer uses participatory, Heron uses presentational. And then I found this one really beautiful study out of the University of Saskatchewan, who they've been doing this class for a long time, trying to help environmental studies students really deeply connect with the land through transrational ways of knowing. So I picked transrational. I don't know, that might change. And way of knowing, of course, is a mode for accessing knowledge. So rational would be the primary one we use mostly in the Western world, empirical, also embodied, and so on. So my study overview, very quickly, lay people, relational ontology, transrational practice, they are going to be assigned to this task to envision technology that creates an embodied experience of relationality. I'll give them a theory of change. They're going to use transrational ways of knowing. I'm going to get some output from them. I'm going to put that output into AI, just like I did with Mimi's dream. It's going to give me something. I'm going to iterate on it, to Marcus's point. I'm probably going to iterate quite a bit. And then we're going to use that prototype together and reflect on it. And that's all I have, other than just some prompts for feedback requests. Well, first of all, does this make any sense at all? Do you think I'm crazy? Do you think it's possible for technology to shift us to a relational ontology? Yeah, Marcus.
Do you have one concrete example of a technology you'd like to see, or you think could be or should be developed that way?
I have a concrete example of an experience I had with where I really wanted technology for something that was a little more transpersonal. I don't know. It was a rational process that found this technology, but it's my Nature Awakening app. I took an eco-spirituality class, and my homework was to do all these experiences in nature. And what I would find myself doing is I'd be out in nature and I'd be like, wait, what was I supposed to do? And I'd like open my files folder on my phone and I'd find the PDF and I'd be going like this and trying, okay, I'm supposed to do this, this, this. And I'm like, it should just be an app. Like, what the heck? Why can I not just have this in an app? So that's the only like one in my brain. Yeah.
Just a follow-up question. If you also have an example for a group of people or a community of people.
The only other thing that there wasn't one other, like I said, that one article from Cruz that was where they did that and created architecture. It's a firm in Brazil called Third Margin. And there was one other study I found where the researchers took a group of people that were Kabbalists, and they read Kabbalist texts, and they talked about the concept of miracles, and they did drawings basically of miracle making machines, not as a group, but individually. So no, I don't have an example. Yeah. Is it Tia or Tia?
the first time. I'll try to be real quick. I know we're right super at the end. I like your question of, do you think that's possible? And I think I know where I've come to is this is inevitable, right? It's not, can this happen? It's what's it going to look like when it happens. So I really do think that this is such an incredible way in, right? We're not going to unring the AI bell. And I think for me, we worry so much about this is being used in such wrong way. But I think something else that's even more important is instead of saying, no, I'm not going to interact with this at all because, I don't believe copyright, yada, yada, all of those things. By doing that, you are saying that you're not going to have a voice in the direction that this takes. And this is not going anywhere. So I think it's so crucial that we're looking at how do we make this a tool that betters humanity instead of being used like in the current iteration. So I think.
Do you have a question for us or no?
Oh no, that's great feedback though. Thank you. Yeah, that warms my heart. I really appreciate it. Yeah.
I completely agree with you, Taya.
Joyce?
I had a similar question to the one Marcus just asked, but could you go to your previous slide where you showed your smart art? Do you have an example of technology that creates an embodied experience of relationality?
I mean, I would say it's technology serving that experience in that, when all the time I'll be outside, I'll open Insight Timer, I'll do a meditation that's meant to be done outside, and technology is enhancing my embodied experience. But no, no, I could be completely crazy. I think I might be crazy, but I'm still so interested to try. Yeah, Anthony.
Yeah, maybe one example of an embodied experience of relationality through technology are things such as neuro interfaces. So I think about deep brain stimulation or transcranial magnetic stimulation, in which the individual, their nervous system is interacting through technology through somebody who's also programming it. And it can dramatically impact cognition, mood, motoric control. And so you end up with this unique embodied experience of relationality in medicine that's a little different than that happens just through clinical discourse or even the physical exam. The individual provider and the patient now have this deeply shared embodied experience through the technology.
Yeah, beautiful. I'm really hopeful I can do it with just software, because that's, unfortunately, anything that involves hardware, we're still in a land where AI has not yet allowed us to create that, but we'll see.
That's a great specific example from medicine. And I have to say, in a general sense, isn't it the case that the online education we're doing is through software that allows us to connect in a different way? And sometimes people have very compelling and deep experiences through this medium. And lots of people report having profound experiences in settings like the one we're in right now that don't necessarily have to be in person. So there's that as well, that general sensibility as well.
Yeah, thank you. Derek,
have you considered like microdosing, vibe coding while microdosing?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that might be one of the transrational ways of knowing for sure, or even hero dosing. I don't know. Depends on what the group is up for.
Yeah, macrodosing.
Yeah. I do think that might eliminate a few people that I have that I'm interested in having, because I want it to be group experiences as much as possible.
Are we out of time, or are you looking for more feedback right now?
I'm willing to keep going if you guys are.
I mean, I can also send it by email. I have all kinds of thoughts. I find it inspiring, actually, just in general. I think I find one thing that's extremely possibly inspiring is, just thinking of communities in general, communities of neighbors, communities of students, communities of whatever that have common needs. For example, bartering in a community, having an app that allows people locally to barter services. There are actually, I think there are apps. There certainly used to be websites around this and various and so on. But how would you enable a group of neighbors to develop a bartering system or bartering app, right? And again, you would have to have them somehow involved. They have different needs, different services, different ways. Do we include cash or not? Do we, whatever, right? How would that be developed in the way that you're suggesting? That's one
Yeah, I
concrete
think
example.
that is a concrete example. I think that's in the space of, from a methodological perspective, that's more participatory, like to bring the people that are actually going to use the app. And this is a little bit, what I'm saying is, and it's maybe a little, I don't know what the word is, arrogant. I don't know, but that there's wise people out there, like super high level. There's really wise people out there that understand things that I think if the general population could integrate, like a Buddhist monk, for example, if we could integrate their wisdom somehow, then we would all be better off. Now it's a little, that's a little top down or hierarchical or something perhaps, but using technology is always a choice. So if I, as a human being, I want to understand interbeing. I get it intellectually. I want to live it. I want to be it. If there was technology that helped me do that, I would use it. But who could build that technology? Nobody. There's no requirements there. The Buddhist monk has to, this is my theory. Could they vibe code that technology? Yeah, Joyce.
I'm having a little trouble connecting the dots just because you've got a really broad swath and it's all fascinating. But I think about like what Marcus just described. You could say Nextdoor does that or Craigslist does that. Or you could talk about Noom or Dear Gabby that incorporates some kind of higher wisdom that you can consume in snackable doses. And I'm just what earlier you had talked about using tech to reveal the truth, which is fascinating. And you talked about shamanism, East versus West. One thing you didn't talk about was spirituality, which it sounds like you're brushing up against, but not really focused on. So I'm wondering, like, if
Oh,
you could,
absolutely focused on. Yeah, I would say it's just too broad of a term.
okay,
That's this big. Transrational ways of knowing is at least only this big.
so as a an audience member, and hopefully maybe somebody would ask for input on your experiments. I would
I'm looking for
love,
volunteers,
okay,
study members.
I
Yeah.
would love to help you out. I just looked you up on LinkedIn, and I think we have a fair bit of overlap working in tech. And we probably know a lot of the same people at Microsoft. I am wondering if you could narrow your scope a little bit just to make it easier to grok what you're talking about.
Jennifer would probably agree with you.
It's a mysterious.
No, I can't. Just kidding. It's a great idea.
It's interesting how the conversation has been circling around examples quite a bit. And, I feel that CIS generally in our department does attract real visionaries. And there's sort of a double-edged sword to that if you're really sort of at the frontier looking at what's possible, it can be challenging to make that leap. And so finding ways to ground in anything going on. And I know you've given examples in the course, Sari, of various theories that are grounded in specific applications and, various types of applications like we've talked about a little bit today. So, but do you have any current thoughts on that? Because, it is a part of the process, the finding a way. I mean, I think this presentation was very well grounded. But your goal is very ambitious, and that's the challenge, right?
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I think I've been just trusting the process, thanks to Jennifer keeps Told me the answer was in the literature. It was. She told me the answer is in the revising. I'm sure it will be. It's actually, I would say that the best example I have right now is just me doing this process. For a long time, I wasn't sure. And there's a lot of really beautiful transpersonal research methodology, right? There's so much overlap in that space. Like in the transpersonal space, there's a whole book on like how to use transpersonal, transrational ways of knowing to do your research, right? So yeah, I think I'm trusting the process. I wasn't sure if I was going to do theoretical or qualitative. And just like I was reading an article and I just got this hit. It was just like the voice spoke, Shari, you're doing qualitative. I'm like, oh, great. Thank you. I didn't know that. Okay. So I think I'm just going to keep going. Yeah, Anthony.
Anthony, go first, and then I have one thought on the last.
Sure.
Yeah.
Again, I'll just bring up clinical because I think in a lot of ways we do things that aren't always known more broadly. But we've moved into a lot of group medical visits. And I don't mean therapeutic in terms of emotional, I mean physical visits. And so, for example, they had match day recently for medical residencies in this country last week. And for example, at the medical school where I am at the University of Arizona, one student out of 110 went into neurology, one. And there's going to be a huge challenge with delivering neurological care in this country. We're reaching a cliff where people my age at 60 are going to retire. And there's very few people going into the field. So we've been looking at technological ways to do two things. Deliver care, which is straightforward. I think to some of Joyce's comments, just common approaches to doing this. But the other is the identity of the provider. And this gets into the transpersonal. When I've led those groups, I'm realizing I'm very different in a group of 6 patients simultaneously with their family members than I am as an individual provider isolated in a room with one person. The approach is different. I am evolving. And in fact, most of the conversations have become more transpersonal. The healing that's going on is touching base because of the group through that technology of being together, often because of vast geographic areas. It's often in a setting like this, that spiritual issues, mystical issues, existential issues of the illness are now being asked to be a part of the clinical domain more than it had ever been when I'm isolated with one person. There's something about a relational identity developing in the group, but also in the provider who is now seeing themselves through a relational lens in a transpersonal way, the content itself, but the transformation of how to consider healthcare. And I look at technology and what you're doing as an accelerant of that in how to actually train in the pedagogy of medical students, how to embrace these types of experiences into formal training so that we can deal with what might be some very real world workforce challenges and not have just algorithm-based issues that are informational, but still meaningful engagement as we use technology in care and address them in these really unique relational ways. I know it's not directly appropriate to what you're talking about today, but it's just an example of something happening in a particular field.
Yeah, beautiful. Thank you, Anthony. Yeah, Marcus.
Just connecting a few dots. So, and I think Anthony is supporting that with what he just said, in that I would never trust a single visionary or guru or whatever expert to know or have all the answers. And so I very much believe the participatory approach is the right one for many problems. Now, that means on the flip side, it's good to have maybe a bunch of neighbors together or a bunch of technologists together, but add an artist, add a visionary, add a guru to it, and you often get a much better solution or a more fun solution or something that's more, more enjoyable in some way. And I think, so one connection is also to your concept or your desire for post-humanist technology. meaning no difference between races, genders, and so on and so on, that for me implies a participatory approach. And you could even try to get so far. What does it mean in terms of including animals, right? You said no difference between animals. Well, if you're developing something that somehow affects animals, how could you include those animals, or some animals, in the development of some new app, some new technology?
Yeah,
And
there's
that may
actually, that's
sound
a
silly, but it's
really,
actually, I think it's possible. You could imagine if you do something that involves for pets, those pets could be involved in the iteration of different
yeah, that is being done. That work is being done.
Yeah.
More than human design is actually incredibly rich, and it's one of the reasons I chose not to do it because I didn't see as much of a gap there. I mean, there's so much more to be done in more than it's called more than human design. But what I don't see is helping more people want to care about more than human design, right? This is why I think the relational ontology is such a beautiful target. You could say that I'm dictating what people should think, but again, they don't have to use my software. Yeah, Jennifer?
I just was thinking about a little bit of linking between Anthony's comments and Marcus's comments and your reply, and thinking about how, in a bit of a deep dive recently, and listening to AI experts talking about AI, one of the things that really strikes me, and its related technologies, is the underlying training and presumptions that go into the thinking. And then also a little bit of hubris, just, money and power and all that. And so, I was listening to, what's his name? Godwan, who was an ex-Google tech, who was on Diary of a CEO recently. And some of what he was saying for me eventually got really off the wall. And where it got off the wall was correlated with background training, which was very much in, we don't really produce a lot of Renaissance thinkers, where our society is so organized towards training in particular silos and getting really good in a particular area. And when it comes to the worldview shift you're talking about, the underlying worldview of a relational worldview, unfortunately, that also implies having an entire educational system that supports that more, so that we don't have this kind of siloed thinking where someone's brilliant in one area, but maybe, lacking some of these other background areas and sensibility and sort of ethos and values that match that sort of integrate and synthesize in a real way. So somehow, the worldview shift you're talking about, one other thing I'll say about it is that I think that if people start to design technologies, and AI does kind of have some unusual powers that could be entwined with some of the specific tech applications you're thinking about, that would exemplify more the relationality, then that could be something that would influence us towards manifesting more of that world. So, there is that kind of entwine, you pull one thread, and so there's that side too. And I think that the specific example Anthony gave is a really great one, and just sort of maybe mapping what are the examples in different fields of ways that it's actually raising more relational consciousness already.
Yeah, and that kind of goes to the theory of change, right? And a section of my lit review that is not very well fleshed out, as Jennifer pointed out for me. But there's a lot of people in that space of how do we shift a relational ontology, doing all kinds of some tiny bits of technology here and there, but mostly through the more standard interventions of workshops or meditations or whatever it is, or reading or content, poetry, art, right? There's so much there. So I don't have I don't have a theory of change yet.
You have a lot, and you've done so much good work. And I was happy for this to be running over a bit, because I think the feedback part is so helpful and vital and inspiring for you right now. And so
I'm sorry I talk so much.
No, it's great. It's wonderful. And I'm so happy that we had so many great guests who can bring real expert knowledge to this conversation, and expert questions also. And you're in fourth semester, I mean, of course you have a lot of unanswered questions right now. It's completely normal. So, but I hope that some of what we've been generating today will be inspiring for you in the next steps.
Yeah, thank you all. Really appreciate you all being here.
I do invite,
and reach out to me if you want to be a participant.
yeah, and I invite people to
Mimi's already signed up. She doesn't have a choice.
share more questions and reflections with Sari afterwards by email too. I'm sure that'd be welcome.
Absolutely.
So we can officially close the recording now, and thank you everybody so much for this extremely vital conversation.